So the last video I explained the basics of the Pearson square, how it works. This one's going to be a little bit more complicated, but I think that it'll be quite possible to follow along with it, and you can build your own program on how to do some formulation a little bit more complex. So again, remember the big shortfall of the Pearson square is that we can only do 2 ingredients, and in most cases we have several more ingredients than just 2. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a program now. And I'm going to leave some spaces, and you'll see how those spaces will get filled in later as we go along, and we'll just kind of build it from the ground up. So I made my screen a little bit bigger this time, hopefully then it'll be easier to see. So I'm going to first start with my list of ingredients. And so first thing I'm going to put on is I'm going to feed corn, I'm going to feed some distiller's grains, I'm going to have some first cut hay, and a vitamin mineral premix. Now, what I'm going to do as well is I'm going to try to explain again a few more little tricks with Excel that can be helpful. I'm going to try to do a better job of explaining them as well. So if you have a situation where the word goes over to the next space and you want to keep it all, there's 2 ways. You can just click on it and drag it, or you can just put the thing up there where you see how it changed there, and I can just double click on it and it will automatically go to the longest one. Now, that may not be the only one I want to add, and so I want to go maybe all the way up to having this many feeds in there, and so I'm just going to color those ones right at the top. Again, anything that's colored are things that I can change, I can add if I want to add. Okay, next thing I'm going to put in here is I'm going to put in something for as fed intake, and we'll fill this in later because remember, we formulate on a dry matter basis. The reason why we do that is because if I want to substitute, for example, corn silage for some dry grain, and I do it on an as-fed basis, it becomes very difficult because you have to do the calculations for the dry matters and so forth. If I do it on a dry matter basis, it's just a 1-for-1, assuming fiber requirements are met and everything like that. And so I'll have my as-fed intake sitting right here. And then I'm going to put in a percent here, and I can also put in a kilograms per day. And there we have that. Now again, we'll fill in those ones later on as we come along. Now one of the things you can do as well is I can actually merge these two. See how this C, it goes for both of those? So if I highlight them both, and the way I'm highlighting them is I'm hitting shift and then the cursor over key, or you can just click and drag it like this as well. And then I can hit this merge and center up here, and it merges and centers them. And so now just to make it easier, I'm going to do the exact same thing. So I'm going to hit Control C as copy, and then Control V as paste, and I'm going to make this dry matter intake. Okay, and now I have dry matter intake in here. So what I'm going to do then here is these 2 percentages are going to be calculated using our old Pearson square. We'll get to that in a little while. But the rest of the values you have to put in how much you're going to feed. Okay, so I'll just put in color that right off the top. And so let's say off the top I'm going to put in 50%. Oh, now this is actually one of the things I should point out. If you're going to be using percents, you should click on that whole line, drag on it, and then hit this percent key. I do like hitting it giving it one more decimal place when I do that. I find then it just looks, it's a little bit better, a little bit more accurate. I can see numbers. So now I can, for example, have 85%. Let's say the vitamin mineral premix I'm going to put in is at 1% as well. Okay. Then what I'm going to have to do is down here, I'm just going to put a column for now, a row here called total. And then I'm going to put down here a row called target. Okay, now the target is what I'm aiming to get. And I would get that. I use the NRC. I think I showed you the NRC book. I got the numbers I'm using from the NRC. You can go online. You can find out nutrient requirements for sheep, and you can find some tables probably that would give you some numbers on that. And so again, this one is predicting that the dry matter intake of my sheep is going to be 2.77. This is a lactating ewe. I believe I made it 80 kilograms with triplets in early lactation. Okay, so it's predicting she's going to eat 2.77 kilos. Again, remember, the correct number for this would be the number that your animals are actually eating. Then the next line I'm going to have over here is going to be crude protein, kilograms per day. Remember, an animal doesn't require a percentage of crude protein, it requires kilograms of crude protein. And therefore, so depending on how much it eats, it might need a higher percentage or a lower percentage. And so the NRC again says 0.35 here. The next one I'm going to do is energy, TDN, in kilograms per day. And the requirement that comes off those tables is 1.47. And then I'm just going to do a couple minerals just for illustrative purposes. Again, if you want to be accurate about it, you should go all the way down and do them all. And so this sheet requires 9.3 grams of calcium and 8.6 grams of phosphorus. And again, this one here I'm going to color because these are numbers I can change, okay, depending on if I want to do a different animal. Okay, now once I have that done, I'm just going to go across here. I want to put a line on the bottom of this, so this right here you can see bottom border. Now I can just see it, it makes it nice and clean for it, so I can get a total in here easily. So what is going to happen here now is if the animal is eating this much feed in a day and 85% of it is first cut hay, we can actually calculate. So I'm going to go equals, and I just do cursor over to highlight that 85, and I hit times, which is the asterisk for Excel, and I can do it times this target right here. That means the animal is going to eat 2.3545 kilograms of first cut hay per day if it's eating 85% of it. Now, one of the things, actually I'm going to change this. I'm going to make this 50% to start off with. So it's 1.385. Okay, so 1.385. Now, I want to do the same equation all the way down here. I can go through and I can just do equals that times that, and I can do that every time down. Okay, do it for this one as well, even though there's nothing here right now, because if you add another feed in there, then you have it ready to go. However, another way we can do this is if I double click on here, you see how it highlights those. Well, I always want it to be this 2.77, so what I can do is I can put a $sign on front of the E and on front of the 11. It freezes that to be 2.77, and then if I hit copy, which is Control C, go down here, Control V, it automatically will correct itself. Now the only thing that's going to happen is when I go down here, I'm going to lose my little line that I put in, so then I would just have to put that line back in. Okay, so now for example, whatever, if I came up with a new feed and I put 10% in here, it would automatically go on to dry matter intake there. Okay, now what we're going to do as well is we're going to go over here and we're going to leave a little bit of one line. I just like to leave one line there to keep it clean. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, just so we can keep track of what we're working with here, so I just do equals A3, and I'm just going to do a copy and paste all the way down. Okay, and now I have, okay, it's a little wide again there, so I'm just going to double click on it. And now I'm going to put in dry matter, crude protein, TDN, calcium, phosphorus. Okay, and here I'll just put the percent down because each of those is going to be a percent. So the dry matter of corn, I have just as numbers, but these are all going to be percentages. So what off the top, I'm just going to go right across the whole thing, hit percent, increase the decimal point by 1, and so 88%. The distillers, let's say, is the same dry. The first cut hay is 85%. Vitamin mineral premix is usually fairly dry, and we'll just leave all the rest of those blank for now because we don't have anything else to put in there. 8% crude protein, 29% crude protein, 12% crude protein. There's no protein in the premix. TDN, 90%, approximately 90% for that. 58%, and of course, again, there's no energy in the premix. Calcium. Now, in this situation, you have to go 0.02 because it's so low, but that number, these numbers won't show up here. So actually I want to increase these ones by one more decimal place just because there's so little in some of these ingredients. And so 0.58, and let's say that my vitamin mineral premix is 20%. Calcium 0.3, 0.79, 0.26, and 5. Okay, so I have these numbers in. That's the amount of nutrients, of each of those nutrients that are in each of those ingredients. And again, these ones here should be colored because these are ones you could change. You could put in different feeds if you want. Again, write the name of the feed in over here. It'll automatically populate over here, and then put in the nutrient, the concentration that exists in there. So what we can do, for example, now, if my animal, and let's say I don't want to have all these decimal places again in here. I think 2 decimal places is usually, okay, it doesn't want to. If you click it from the bottom, then it should work. Okay, 2 decimal places is probably accurate enough. Not too many of your scales are going to be much more accurate than that anyways. So you can work with that. So if the animal is eating 1.39 kilograms of hay in a day, then what I can do then is I can take 1.39 and I can multiply that by the percent crude protein in the diet, and I'm going to get that 0.162 like that. Okay, 0.17. Actually, maybe I'll just leave 3 decimal places on for this one just for accuracy. So just so you can see it. Now, again, in this situation, if I want to copy, watch what happens if I copy this and just paste it to TDN. It's saying, oh, okay, now we're going to multiply the TDN by the crude protein. Well, that doesn't make sense. We want it multiplied by the dry matter intake in order to calculate it. So what I can do again is in this situation is I can freeze the E. I don't want to freeze the 5 because if I freeze the 5, watch what happens when I freeze the 5. If I copy this one down, it's going to do this value, the amount of dry matter intake for the hay across there. If instead I go to here and just freeze the E and I copy and paste it down, now it's done the correct one. It's multiplied this number, and of course there's no protein in there in that situation. So what I can do now is I can copy this all the way down. I can take this line and I can copy it all the way across as well, and it will fill in all my numbers. Again, once I do that, I do lose that line on the bottom, and I can just add that back in. Okay, so here you can see all those numbers. Now, I can actually, right off the top here now, I can also copy these numbers and put them up here as well. I don't have numbers here for corn and distillers yet, okay? But I know that it'll be the exact same calculation once I get it in, once I get those percentages in there, okay? So, actually I'm going to leave these kilograms per days out, and I'll explain why for that in a second. So now we have a situation where we know how much all of these other ingredients are going to contribute to our feeds here. To our feeds. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to then make a new line down here called left for the first 2. Okay, I'm going to go down to left for the first 2. So the question I'm trying to find out here is how much dry matter intake do I still have left over for those first 2 ingredients, that corn and distillers grains? Well, if the animal is going to eat a total of this amount of feed, 2.77, how much of the other ingredients is the animal going to eat? So now I can do that in a bracket, and I can do sum of all of these other ingredients. Okay, and that means I have 1.36 kilograms left of feed for those first 2 ingredients. And now the next question I have, remember, for the Pearson square is how much crude protein do I need? Well, I need this much crude protein total, but I'm getting this much crude protein from this ingredient. And I may get some from the other ingredients. I don't have anything listed there now. So I can just do the exact same thing here. I can just, again, copy this one and paste it right here. And you'll see it is a copy of this minus all the other ingredients. So now I can go down here and I can do my Pearson square. And so I'm just going to type in equals corn equals distillers grains. I want the crude protein level from corn. I'm not going to write it down as an 8. I'm going to put it right here. That way it automatically pulls up in case I make a change later. 29% right there. And the amount I need here in the middle is simply going to be 0.18 divided by 1.36. Now again, I can make this into a percent. Okay, I can make that into a percent and I can give that decimal place. And now I can complete the Pearson square as how I explained it last time. So equals, this is going to be 13.5 minus 8. And this is going to be 29 minus 13.5. I can add those 2 numbers up. Again, it equals 21, and 29 minus 8 is 21, so we're on the right track. Now, this always, again, for some reason, when I do this division, it's going to make it really a big number. It doesn't have to be this big. I can, but first I'm going to do this one here, actually. Equals that, because it's going to do the same thing. And so what I can do is I can highlight them both and make those decimal places just down to maybe 2. even when you make it look like it's down to 2, it keeps all the other decimal places in there. And so you don't have to, so it keeps it very, very accurate, your calculation. I believe 66 pixels is about where it was. So what does this mean? This doesn't mean 73% of the diet is going to be corn. This means 73% of the corn and distillers is going to be corn. Okay, there's a number of different ways you can do it. I explain different way to my students. If you actually multiply this number by what's left between here, so in this would be a case, would be 49% is left there. But what I'm going to show you now is just a relatively easy way to do it. We know the animal can eat this, there's this much feed left for it. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go with the kilograms per day and go equals 1.36, or this value down here, times that value right there. Okay, the animal is going to eat that means it'll be 1 kilo of corn and 0.36 kilograms of distiller's grains. Okay, now actually if we do a sum for the total, it equals 2.77, which is exactly what the target should be for this one. Okay, and so I can now copy this one and just keep on pasting it all the way across, and you can see it's adding up. So we can see right away we've hit our target here, and we've hit our target right there for the protein because our Pearson square met that last requirement. Now what I can do is to get this percentage right here, I can't just take this percentage because those two percentages add up to 100 by themselves. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go equals 1 kilogram divided by the total, and here I'm going to do equals 0.36 divided by the total, and that gives me the 12.9. Okay, so there you can see the calculation occurring across there, and we have that. Now, once I have that done, the next thing I want to do is I like to put another line in here just to tell me what percentage of my requirements I'm meeting. And so what I do is I just take this number here, divide it by that number, it equals 1, I make that into a percent. Okay, and that just means, okay, I'm at 100%, I'm at 100%. Oh, I'm feeding 140% of the requirements for the TDN, and I'm not even close to the percentage I require for those two ingredients right there. Okay, so which is actually a little bit surprising. Let me just kind of look over my things here a second. Okay, sorry, and I realized I just made a mistake. This is all in kilograms right now. This is all in kilograms. I didn't convert it to grams per day yet, and so obviously kilograms is going to be 1,000th of it. So I have to take this number and I have to multiply it by 1,000. Okay, and so I'm going to do the same thing here. And I'm going to paste that all the way down for each of those. And again, I'm going to put that line at the bottom there. Okay, sorry. I should have remembered that. So this is grams per day. And so therefore, and I'm just going to actually decrease that decimal place down just to 1, just because we're already at grams per day anyways. And so you can see that we're actually well above the requirements for the minerals. Okay, so important to remember, this is grams per day, so you have to multiply that by 1,000 to get it to work. Now, a few other little points that I want to put in here then yet. So you can see the I have to fix the as fed now, because this is what I'm actually going to be feeding. Now this is where sometimes you can get errors in here, so I'm going to show you a little bit more complex calculations you can do. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to find out how many kilograms per day of the as fed, and so what I will do is I'll simply just take the dry matter intake per day, and then you divide it by the dry matter percentage of each ingredient. And again, I can make this number just with 2 decimal places, and now I can copy this all the way down. Now, what you're going to see happen here is I get to divide by 0 because there's nothing in here, so it gets divided by 0, so you get a very strange number here. And so what you can do if you just don't want to have that in there and it won't add up well or anything like that, is we can make this a little bit more complex. Okay, so what we're going to do is say equals if. We're going to put an if statement, and the way you put an if statement, then you do an open bracket. You say if this number equals 0, then just leave it blank. Okay, so we just do that 2 quotation marks. That is a blank. Otherwise, or the other thing actually we could do is just say it's 0. Okay, let's just say, then it's going to be 0. We're just going to put a 0 here because there's going to be 0 kilograms of that feed. If it's not, then we do what we wanted to do. And I'm going to just put it in brackets just so it's easy to see that. And this was what we originally had divided by that L3. Close that bracket. I have to close that bracket there, and then I hit enter. I get the exact same number I had there before, but watch what happens when I copy this one down. Get the exact same numbers all the way down, but now we're just going to get a 0. Just get a 0. Just get a 0. We don't get that error anymore on that one. Okay? Now we can do a sum here as well, so I can hit copy and do a sum. By the way, I can do a sum here as well, and I get the percentage. Okay, for that if I want it should up to 100%. So that means the animal's going to eat 3.2 kilograms of feed as fed per day. And so what is the percentage of each? Now what I can do is I just do this 1.14 and divide it by the total. Now again, this total is going to be the same total for all of them, so I can just hit $, and then I can copy it down like that. Okay, and there you have all of that filled out. Now when I look at this diet, for example, right away I see, wait a minute, I got way too much energy in this feed. So now I can just go, okay, well, what has a low energy in this? My first cut hay. I'm going to increase my first cut hay to 60%. And watch what happened to TDN. Okay, it went from 138 down to 132, down to 126, and every time it recalculates these numbers up here as well. If you look at that, right, if I go to 80%, it's changing the amount of corn and distillers I need in there in order to make sure I still hit my protein every time. And as you can see, I'm bringing my protein levels, my energy levels more in line. So I get down to 117%, and maybe that's where I'm happy with it being, for example. I could still technically go higher. One thing you have to be careful about is if I go too high, you start getting a negative number up there on the top. Okay, you see the negative number for the corn there? That obviously is impossible. You can't remove corn from it. So this would be, this ration would not work at this point in time. Okay, I could still theoretically hit everything that she needs by doing that right there. So that means feeding just basically between the corn and distillers, feeding about 0.28, about 0.3 kilos, which is about a little over, not quite a pound a day of feed. Okay, and you'd be able to hit that requirement because this hay isn't horrible hay that you're feeding. Now you may find that the dry matter with that much hay, what essentially you're going to do is you're going to just feed this stuff as a free choice on your farm probably, and then you're going to put in the other feeds. So let's say let's say I come along and I decide, you know what, I don't like this very much. I want to add another ingredient. Let's say I'm just going to go down to 85% here. I can add a new ingredient in here. I can call it well, let's just go with corn silage. Okay, and if I put the corn silage in, its dry matter percent is 35%. It has a protein percent of 7. Its TDN is around 60. And I don't know the calcium number, so I'm just going to say the same as, and phosphorus the same as, whoops, 0.2, 0.30, and then you get those numbers. Now I could put in, let's say, let's go down to 80 here, and let's say I want to put in, or 70, and I'm going to put 15% in of that. And automatically it does all the calculations, and it holds those two ingredients constant. Okay? And maybe I decide, you know what, I don't have that much first cut hay, so I'm going to cut that back to 50 again, and then we're going to make that 35%. And you can see again, I can just completely, oh, this one's not going to work because of our okay, the energy here, we have too much there, and so maybe I have to cut that back to 30%. There we go. Now we have it, it'll balance. Generally, you're going to find that your calcium and your phosphorus are going to be a little bit high. One of the things I recommend you do actually is put just maybe down somewhere around here. I make one called calcium to phosphorus ratio, and this is where you take the totals of each and divide them by each other, and you get a calcium to phosphorus ratio. And if you remember, we like that number to be around a 2, and so maybe I would like to get a little bit more calcium in this particular diet in order to get that ratio a little closer to where I would like it to be. So either I can buy a premix that has a little bit higher levels of calcium in it right here, or maybe I want to put a little bit of limestone. And I don't remember off the top of my head what limestone is in terms of its percentage, but let's say we're just going to put in 1% limestone, and it's like 99%, no, none. And off the top of my head, I don't know what it is, but let's just say it's 35% and 0. Now you can see I've got my, if this was correct, I get my calcium to phosphorus ratio correct. Okay. One other thing I like to put on here as well somewhere, and again, this is not necessarily the cleanest way I have it all laid out. You may want to change it a little bit, is I like to do a little kind of diet summary. And so crude protein, TDN, maybe I want even the moisture levels in here, so let me just go dry matter, crude protein, TDN, calcium, and phosphorus. And this is the required amount, and this is the supplied amount. Okay, and so there's not really a requirement for that, but what dry matter supply will simply be the dry matter, this number divided by that number, and then made into a percent. So again, we'll just, right, and we'll actually just do that, make all of them percentages right off the top. We may land up actually changing the decimal places for crude protein for the calcium and phosphorus. The crude protein is simply going to be the supply. How much is being supplied is going to be the total divided by, in this case, you do the dry matter intake. Okay, and the TDN is going to be the TDN supplied divided by the dry matter intake, and we're going to do the calcium. Now this is grams per day, so first thing we have to do is we have to divide this number by 1,000. Divide it by 1,000, and now we can divide that number by the total, which is 2.77. And again, we get a relatively small number here, so I'm just going to put one more decimal place just so we can get a little bit more accurate. If that was 0.85, it would still look like 0.9, right? So it just gives us a little bit more accurate number on that. And then again, we can do the same thing with our phosphorus total. Divide that by 1,000. And then divide that by our 2.77. And again, we get a 0.4, which actually is well, it is 0.4 in this case. For crude protein requirements, just if you want to have those numbers beside, you just look at the target and just take this target number and divide it by that number right there, the target dry matter intake, and we're going to do the same thing with our TDN and divide that by 2.77, and then we're going to take the calcium, sorry, I forgot, we're going to take that calcium divided by 1,000 and then divide that by the total target value, and then we'll do the same thing here with the phosphorus, 8.6 divided by 1,000 divided by 2.77, and again I can just increase the decimal place on each of those by once just so you can see what those numbers look like. Maybe this, it would be better as to put it as a target there. So now you can just see, okay, I'm supplying it. It's about 60% dry matter. This feed I'm offering the animals, crude protein levels. Okay, and that should always be bang on if everything has happened correctly over here. And you can see that my energy levels are a little higher than they're supposed to be, and my calcium and phosphorus a little high as well. But you can go look up online. You'd find out that 1.5 is where it becomes toxic. So we're still within well under the levels where toxicity is an issue, and we've been able to target that 2.2 ratio right there. So now you can see I can change whatever feeds, I can add feeds, I can take feeds away from here, whatever I like to do, and I can do a basic formulation. If you get really complex. I have a program, an Excel program, where I have actually all the requirements listed down here, and I can pull them up here automatically with a drop list. I'm not going to explain how to do that Excel. You can find out how to do lists and stuff like that, and it automatically pull up the new requirement for the new animal. And then I have down here a huge feed library, and again I can pull up feeds automatically right here, and then it actually kind of populates the other way. Then it comes over here and equals over here, so it automatically pulls everything up for me that I would like to have pulled up into that library. And so, and then I have my calcium phosphorus ratio and these numbers in here as well. And then you can just, this here part, you never need to see this. So you can technically just click on it, click on there and just drag it and pull it off your screen. You don't need to see that, right? It doesn't have to be there. As a matter of fact, this here doesn't even have to be there as either. You can get those things kind of out of the way and clean this up however you want it to look like. Okay, but here you can see you've got a very simple basic program that you can do some very basic simple formulations. Obviously you should do all the vitamins and minerals, okay, not just calcium and phosphorus. I'm just trying to keep this simple. Actually, frankly, one that I think would be highly valuable to put onto here would also be your calcium. Oh, sorry, your effective NDF, or in actual, what I would do is I would do starch. Find out how much starch is in each of these, and you can then use starch as a predictor of how much how much time that animal will spend in an acidic environment. So just continue that. Let's actually put starch in here. We're going to add starch in. Starch as an ingredient and as a percent. And so I just looked up the numbers there, and it's 73.4% for corn. Distillers is 9.3%. First cut hay, I couldn't find any number for that. I think it'd be extremely low, so I'm just going to put in 0%. I don't think there's going to be very much. There's not going to be any in a premix. And corn silage has 14.6%. Limestone, of course, is 0 as well. And we'll just put that number there because there's no ingredient there, but we'll just, so it looks sharp across. Now what I want to do actually is I'm just going to add a line in here, which means I am going to slightly decrease the size of this chart just so it'll all fit on there. Hopefully you can still see all the numbers okay. And I'm going to put in starch. And we're going to do, it doesn't really matter, let's just go with kilograms per day, what we put in. And so it will be the same equation that we had for the TDN. So I can just do copy from here, click paste over there, paste, 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 all the way down until I get to there, make my line across, and I can put in the total right there. There is no necessary target level for the starch on this case, but what I want to find out is I want to find out what percent starch I have in the diet. So I'm going to put starch down here, and the supply is going to be, again, 0.2 divided by 2.77. And that is a percent, so it's about 8.14%. And then I have a calculation based on some research we did here. Is we can predict the amount of time the animal is going to spend in acidosis based on the levels of starch in a diet. And the way that equation works is I'm going to do equals negative minus 15.57 plus bracket, and it will be the percentage 0.5 times percent starch in the diet, and hit bracket and hit enter. And so this number is a negative number. It doesn't really make sense in a way to do this because an animal can't spend negative time in. So basically it just means this animal is not going to have any stress from having too much starch in its diet. And so what we could do is I'm going to just copy this. Okay, actually first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a bracket around the whole thing just to clean it up a little bit. Okay, I'm going to take a bracket around that whole equation, and I go copy, and then I'm going to go equals. If that calculation is less than 0, then 0. Else, that calculation, close bracket, and we have it. That animal is not going to spend any time in any stress at all will not be in times of, and you can pretty well predict that with that amount of starch in there. Let's just for the fun of it take out all that first cut hay and all that corn silage. Okay, actually this is somewhat surprising to me. I don't think it should be. Okay, I must have done this equation incorrectly. Let's just go back to the original equation. Equals bracket negative 15.57 plus 0.5 times, oh yeah, sorry, I got it. This number, I have to take this number and multiply it by 100 because I'm not, this is, the number is based on 57, not on 0.57, which Excel wants to do. That's what my problem is. Sorry about that. So what I have to do here is where it says N20, I want to multiply that number by 100. And I have to do the same thing right here, times 100. Okay, so here you can see that animal is going to spend 13 hours a day. Hours in acidosis per day. Okay, and so again, if I put the numbers that I originally back, I don't remember what exactly I had in here, but let's say 20%, and let's go with 30% and bring that, we can go even higher than that. Let's go 30 and 40, 45. And we can see we're in a situation now where that animal, we've got enough fiber in that diet. And we can actually play with this a little bit to find out where that number would be. So for example, what if I went down to 20%? No, I'm still fine. What if I went down to, 10%? I'm still fine. 0%, still fine because I have 45% corn silage in that diet. 40, oh, now is when I'm just starting to get on the edge of having too much in there. Okay, so I can see there, now I'm going to spend about 3/4 of an hour a day in acidosis. For you, I probably don't want that. Market lamb, I'm okay with it going up to about 3 hours a day being in acidosis, but I don't want to see that in a situation with my lactating ewes. So let's say it's 40%. Okay, I just want to put in a little bit of Timothy hay in there just to make sure that I don't get that acidosis going on. So again, you can just do calculations like this, and you can add things in. You can add the other, like I say, the other minerals in there, the other vitamins in there. And you could have done more ingredients here if you wanted to. If you want to, for example, here, I could just go now, click on here, and you see a little arrow, and I can right click, and I can say insert. And it automatically will insert another line in there. Now I have to take these lines that were existing right here and paste them down. Okay, and I want to also then take this one down here and go like that as well. And so I could add more ingredients if I want to in here. And now I can continue with this and just keep on, get a rough idea of the formulation for your animals. Try a formulation, see how the balance works out. And again, this is for a lactating ewe. Maybe what you want to do is down a little lower. You want to put a little bit of details. Animal type. So this is a ewe lactating triplets. And then you can just down here I'm going to put in DMI, and then I'm just going to copy and I can just put these numbers right here. That way, if I want them back again, if I want to change my animal, I don't have to go looking these numbers up again. I can just see it right here. Oh, it was 80 kilogram ewe, by the way. Again, maybe I just want to have some, just whatever details you need to be able to identify it. Now, let's say I want to go and find out the numbers for a different type of ewe and put those numbers in up here. I still have these numbers. I could just pull them back up there if and when I want them. Okay, so you can make it, and you can make it a little bit fancier with lists and so forth as well, as if you understand how to work with Excel in more detail. So just a simple little program. We're using the fundamental Pearson square again. We're still using that fundamental on there, and we're trying to build up a program that we can use to do some fundamental formulation with our sheep. Again, be careful. Just because you make this program doesn't mean you understand every little component. Certain minerals, certain things can cause problems in terms of toxicities and so forth. So don't assume just because you can do this that you're an expert. What I just recommend you do, if you're working with a nutritionist, play with it. When they give you the rations and so forth that you're working with, put them in here, see how they compare, work with them that way, and that will get you more and more familiarity so that you can start to have confidence making some maybe slight adjustments based on how you on what you would like to do with that. Okay, so that's it for this video, and hopefully you found that useful.